All right, kids, here we are, part 4. My time in school and the damages that it caused me. Delphi Village, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, 1989. My first day of school, or day treatment, or punishment, or whatever you want to call it. I had to get up at 5 a.m. and I had to be ready by 6 so they can come pick my ass up. They had a van driver named Walter Lovejoy, who went around and picked up all the troublemakers, those bad kids, and took us to Adelphi. He was really cool, and took us like almost 2 damn hours to pick everybody up. I mean, we went all over Irwin, Greensburg, Jeanette, wherever. And I think the furthest they ever had to drive out of the way was to New Kensington to pick some kid up out there. Then there was another kid who lived clear back in the boonies of Ligonier, and that was a hell of a drive from what I understand. A lot of us, we were on different vans, so, But anyway, the first day, walked in, we had to take IQ tests, we had to go down and get our mug shots taken. And it kind of reminded me of a kindergarten class type of setting, it wasn't, this college setting like they told me it was going to be. And a lot of these kids that were in there, they were in there for some real hardcore shit, like drugs and alcohol, theft. A lot of them just didn't go to school, so they were in trouble for that shit, and we had to confront each other. Like, basically, you had to tell on everybody for little stupid shit like rolling their eyes, or, maybe a cuss word here and there, or, really dumb shit. And if you even so much as had a little bit of body odor, they confronted you on a hygiene issue, and that was a problem. And, a lot of the kids, too, that were in there, their parents would just drop them off at the juvenile facility and, say, well, I got a new life here. I don't want my kid to take them, or her. Because there were a lot of kids that were in there from broken homes. The parents didn't, really want them. And you kind of got to feel bad for them. And upstairs, in the facility I was in, they had all the group homes up there. You had Georgia Station and the Sweeney House. They basically dealt with all the sex offenders and the sex victims. Keystone House handled the chemical dependency kids. Derby House was a girls' group home, but they weren't in our facility. They went to Derry High School. And if you were a flight risk, you had to hand your shoes over. You weren't allowed to wear shoes because they didn't want you to run away, which a lot of the kids did anyway. I mean, they usually had a friend on the outside. It would, have a pair of shoes stashed away for them somewhere. But, I mean, it really sucked in there. I mean, Christ, fucking this place here masqueraded as an educational concentration camp. Fucking prisoners, I mean, they have better rights. It really sucked. It was hard. And I found out later from the supervisor in there that Pekarsik made a phone call and started running his mouth about me. So they really started giving me some shit, and I had enough at this point. So I packed a bag and away I went. I ran away from home. I had to run away from all this shit because I couldn't take it anymore. It was crazy. I couldn't deal with it. So, I didn't know where I was going. I stayed off the main roads and the highways. I was like going through a lot of woods and cornfields, and finally I found myself in North Huntington. It's kind of funny I moved to Irwin, because it's kind of where my life actually, was a rebirth and a new beginning, because it was at this time I was walking down the highway and a car with a couple of punk rockers and pulled over and asked me if I needed a ride somewhere. And I'm like, sure. And I told them my situation and everything, and they were like, well, you can come stay with us. They were staying down in North Versailles somewhere. I actually took a drive past the place the other day where I stayed, and it just brought back so many memories. You know, I really don't want to give out the names of these people, because they were so cool. Let's call them George and Helga. And the girl who was with them, her name, let's call her Amy. She was a runaway. Her dad was a big time construction contractor for different corporations, so they had money. Mom was a fucking rich religious nut, and her dad used to get drunk and come home and beat on her and rape her, and she'd tell her mom, and her mom would beat the fuck out of her and call her a liar, and then drag her to church, and so she met Helga and George, and took off with them. George knew some people in Pittsburgh, and they were punk rockers, which is why they came this way. They were out of state. Technically the whole fucking thing was illegal. You know, which I really don't care, because these people, they changed my life. This is how I found punk rock. We went to go see a band called Half Life down in Pittsburgh. And I had a really good time. I mean, I actually felt alive for the first time in my life. I was around kids that, I understood them, they understood me. We were just social outcasts. And this is at a time when punk rock was considered dangerous. It wasn't a fashion, there was no Hot Topic or, none of that shit, no Green Day or Rancid, which got big in the 90s, and, whatever, Fall Out Boy and all that other bullshit. You got kids nowadays with mohawks and Misfit shirts on, and they don't even know what the fuck it represents, which, I think is kind of funny. But I remember, the first chord struck from that opening band, and the place just fucking erupted into a goddamn pit and stage diving, and of course I had to fucking jump in on that. I loved it. I had Helga gave me a mohawk before I went down, and George bought me a pair of combat boots, and I mean, I was ready to go. I had so much fucking fun that night. Yeah, it was my first show. And even though I had a couple of beers and I smoked a little bit of weed, I didn't want to get too fucked up, because I was enjoying all this. I loved it. And that whole month and a half was fun. I just had the time of my life, man. We were going to shows, we were partying. And I got to get close to Amy, and, she just felt sorry for me. I felt sorry for her. And finally I got caught. I went out in the daytime, which I shouldn't have done. And lo and behold, it was funny because I ran into my probation officer at a convenience store. And he was there with a sheriff. They were on another case. And, it was just weird how that happened. I got cuffed, thrown in the back of the van. They went to pick up another kid that day. His name was Terry, who lived down that way, and they were asking me, where I was, who I stayed with. I kept quiet. I was not going to tell anybody anything. These people helped me. There was no way I could rat on them. So, technically they would have gotten in trouble. We all would have. George was living on an inheritance, and Helga, she had money too, but she was 18. George was 21. So technically they had gotten in trouble for harboring a fugitive and, some juvenile bullshit. But, I had to go up to the juvenile facility. They stripped me down. I had to shower in front of 2 guards. I had to wear the jumpsuit and everything. And then 2 days later, I had my hearing, and they released me back to the custody of my parents. And boy, I fucking hated people at this point. I had to finish out my sentence in Adelphi Village, and they also sent me to another place called Northern Tier. And, my attitude changed at this point, just all this hate. I was just so filled with hate. I hated everybody and everything. And, I got out, I'll just say, I got out of Adelphi in 1990. There's just too much for Adelphi for me to even discuss. I mean, I've seen so much shit happen there. You know, there was a kid who killed himself on a home visit. You know, the staff, they were rough with us. You know, I got pushed around by the staff there. You know, they pretty much had a right to do what they wanted. But I came back a punk. I came back a punk rocker into the Mount Pleasant school system. I was so scared to go back. I wanted to go to another school because I was on probation, you know, and this was leverage for Pekarsik. You know, they used all that against me. You know, they were making damn sure that I would get into trouble. So I would be thrown out of there for good, you know. And I remember I got called down the first day. My probation officer was there. I had to sign all these papers saying I wouldn't get in any trouble, all this fun shit. And I told him, I said, I'm afraid he's going to start some shit here. You know, he's going to say I'm doing things I'm not just to get me locked up. I said, I would rather be put in another school. You know, I wanted to go to either Southmoreland or Hempfield. You know, I was afraid to go back to Mount Pleasant, you know, especially Pekarsik with all he knew at this point. You know, he knew he could screw me one way or another, you know. Especially, you know, when you're around people. You know, this is around the time, too, when punk rock and heavy metal were dangerous. The PMRC were running around, and churches were having record burnings, and you know, people like me were dangerous. It wasn't a fashion show like it is today, you know, where you know kids are walking around with colored hair and it's more acceptable, whereas back then it wasn't that acceptable. But you know, I was scared. You know, I went back to Mount Pleasant and it was different, man. This was a different time. You know, things changed within that time period, and you know, just I was scared. I was terrified, you know, and I did complete the rest of the year, and I got in some trouble, of course. You know, I wasn't allowed to progress. I tried joining band. I wasn't allowed. You know, I tried everything. You know, I tried to fit in and, you know, just find something, and I just wasn't allowed, you know. So it was like, yeah, fine, fuck you. Fuck all you. And finally, the end of the year, you know, I had to go to a outside in program. You know, Dan Shannon was my probation officer at the time, and these probation officers, I think they were getting kickbacks for sending kids to these like boot camp type things. And they sent me to outside in with a guy named Mr. Hinkle. And boy, this guy hated the Pagans Motorcycle Club. I mean, he just you're gonna join the Pagans. You're gonna be a drug addict. You're gonna blah 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 blah. And then he had something. There was something in the newspaper because after I got out of this place, they took pictures of us while we were up in Canada and everything else. And they had this big news article in the Greensburg paper. And he started off his article. He went to pick up a guy named Davey whose parents were pagans and blah blah blah. But I mean, he hated the pagans for some reason. I don't know why. But that's a story for another time because you know, I got to keep these short and sweet on the gigabytes and all that. But you know, 1990 was not a good year. 89 was not a good year. 88 was not a good year. And I'll just get into all that shit later. So you know, this is part 4. You know, the making of a punk rocker. Cheers.